part of the trick of trying to understand what's going to happen at the draft is to kind of look into the crystal ball and figure out what is going to be the state of the Utah Mammoth franchise in 2027-28. So that's what we're going to do. Why 2027-28? Well, it's pretty clear. Bill Armstrong has earmarked that season as being the time when the team is going to be ready to contend for a Stanley Cup. It will be Armstrong's 8th season as the general manager of this franchise, even though it's a new franchise and it came up from Arizona. It'll be his 8th year. And by that point, really Bill Armstrong ought to be getting to the end point of his rebuild. And I think that's a fair thing to say. Beyond that, this year, the whole goal was to compete for the playoffs. Mission accomplished. This next season, make the playoffs. We'll see. The following season will be about advancing in the playoffs. And then the final year will be to contend in the playoffs. So that is where this franchise is as we take a look at the future. And it's going to impact a little bit of the thinking as it relates to selecting at number 4 in the NHL draft. So what are some of the things that we know about this team in 3 years' time? Well, first, we know that Dylan Guenther and Clayton Keller are under contract. So they're going to have 2 electric, high goal-scoring wingers, one who will be at the end of his prime a little bit, the other one just entering into his prime, but a couple of goal scorers who definitely are going to be on track to be 30 goal scorers on both sides of whoever is going to be the 1C for this team in 3 years' time. There's defensemen that are also going to be under contract and will likely be here. Sean Durzi on the right-hand side and 2 left-shot defensemen in Olli Maatta and Mikhail Sergachev are under contract. And then fresh on the contract extension, Karel Vejmelka is going to be in net. With those players in mind as definitely being under contract in 3 years' time, in my opinion, you take a look at where they slot into that contending roster, and I think you can count on Dylan Guenther as a potential top-line winger. Same goes for the captain, Clayton Keller. Both of them have high skill and have the opportunity to generate tons and tons of goals that create all sorts of problems for other teams. And so, yeah, I think that's 2 pieces that you can count on and feel relatively good about them being in your top line as it goes forward for the Utah Mammoth. Now, in my estimation, Mikhail Sergachev proved everything he needed to prove about the potential of being a number 1 defenseman. Sergachev was fantastic last year in his expanded role, and he's only going to get better at it as time goes on. He had a way of elevating any of the partners he was paired with, and he was partnered with a ton of people last year, and all of them benefited from it greatly. Sean Durzi, in my opinion, probably more suited to being a second pairing defenseman on that right-hand side, so we're going to put him there. There's a chance that he could play first-line defenseman role, but I think if you're contending for a cup, he's more suited for that second pairing and being kind of the leader of that second pairing. He's a good player. Olli Maatta, you can then slide in. He's a good third-pair defenseman on a championship-level team, and probably will still be that way in 3 years' time. And then, we've already covered it. They've bet on Veggie. Veggie is going to be in net and is probably going to be looked to be their number 1 goalkeeper. It's a huge turn of events. Last year, he came in as the backup for Connor Ingram, and now here we are. He is the franchise goalie going into this season and going into this draft. That is the mindset of this team. So who do they need to re-sign? Well, to me, there are 3 players that they can re-sign on July 1st. I don't know when they're going to re-sign them, but my hope would be that Logan Cooley would get re-signed right away on July 1st. We'll see what happens with Jack McBain and Josh Doan. Jack McBain needs to be extended this summer in order to play for the team this fall. I think that's going to happen. Josh Doan, he absolutely is a player that I think showed enough in his rookie campaign to kind of count on him as being a piece for a championship team in the future. And so Josh Doan, another player eligible for a contract extension in July 1st. They may let that play out. Let's let that play for another year before they make that kind of commitment to Josh Doan. But I'd love to see them retain and have Josh Doan because I think he's a piece. So slotting those guys into this contenders roster, you then take a look. Josh Doan, I think he is a nicely suited third line, checking line, right winger. He absolutely changed everything for this team. And when he came in at that third line, he gave some pop on the third line. He plays a little power play. He goes to that bumper spot. He creates havoc. He can do things there. You can use him on the penalty kill. I think there's a lot of ways that Josh Doan's game can continue to come along, but if he's your third line right winger, I think you're in really good shape if he's a piece of your puzzle in terms of building a contender. I think that if he is on your team in the third line, you're in good shape. Jack McBain, same thing. You could potentially put him as a third liner, but I think, again, the whole point of being a cup contender is when you have guys who are probably more suited to be a third liner, but then play on your fourth line. So that's why I think Jack McBain should be on the fourth line. And then if you take a look, Logan Cooley absolutely has every opportunity to be in a 1C in this league. I think he made a huge, giant step forward last season. I believe he'll make even more gains over the next 2 seasons and heading into that third season to be a 1C that can help you all the way to contending for a championship. Logan Cooley is a special player. I think he is the franchise player, and it is why I'm hoping to see a contract extension on July 1st as soon as it's eligible. And I hope it's a long-term, lucrative deal. I would bet on that 100%. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Haven't really loved a lot of the quotes, to be honest. Haven't loved a lot of the quotes coming out of Bill Armstrong's mouth in relation to extending Logan Cooley, because to me, that is priority 1 for this offseason. Let's take a look at the pipeline. One of the important parts of doing a rebuild is making sure that you nail it with your pipeline. And so let's take a look at what kind of the consensus top 5 prospects are for the Utah Mammoth. Iginla was the first-round draft pick in the 2024 NHL draft for the Utah Mammoth. Highly selected piece. In 2023, they took Dmitry Shimashev. Famously, they took him kind of on surprise ahead of Matvei Michkov. Interesting. The top Russian selected in the 2023 draft was not Michkov, but Shimashev. They really like what Shimashev gives them on the blue line going forward. They're really bullish on this player in this organization. Daniel Boot, he also plays for Lokomotiv in Russia, signed to his entry-level contract. Daniel Boot, big power forward, left winger. Then Maverick Lamoureux, those who paid close attention. At the beginning of the season last year, we got to see Maverick step onto the ice, play on the right-hand side for the Utah Hockey Club. And Maverick Lamoureux is, 6'7". He's a steady force there on the right-hand side. There's real potential there. There's just a long way for him to come. And lastly, Michael Robel. Robel was a Minuteman for UMass last year as a goalie. Had a nice season playing in the NCAA. And Robel figures to be a starting goalkeeper someday in the NHL. There's a lot that prospect scouts love about him. And I think what you'll see is that in 3 years' time, maybe Michael Robel will be ready to be a backup goalkeeper, bringing starter-level pedigree to the table for the Utah Mammoth. So as we slide them in, you can see now that you could potentially have TJ Ginla playing on the left-hand side on the second line, and Daniel Boot playing as a power forward, checking kind of guy. Now, he doesn't have a lot of forechecking and back-checking to his game right now. He's got a very good stick. He stick checks, but he has the body to do it. So the question is can you increase his will in the next 3 years to make him a more natural fit on that third line. But Josh Doan going in, making the forecheck, getting the puck dispossessed. Daniel Boot does not need a whole lot to fire a wicked wrister at the net and create goals on that third line. Again, Daniel Boot, probably more a second line winger, but if you can get him on your third line, again, that puts you in a better position to contend. If you look on the left-hand defensive side, you got Dmitry Simashev. He will be right there behind Mikhail Sergachev. This is what he does. He is a solid defenseman who just plays sound. He currently doesn't have a lot of in terms of driving play, but there's enough puck skills to see that he may be able to develop more of that in the years to come. The more important thing is that he is just a steady hand defensively. He does a really great job skating and making sure that he can take away opportunities on the rush from other teams. And that's where he's really, really valuable to this team. And then you can see on the right-hand side, Maverick Lamoureux as a third pair defenseman could be a really great thing for the Utah Mammoth in 3 years' time. As it relates to other signings that Utah will need to address, well, as restricted free agents, they have an opportunity to re-sign Matias Michelli following this season, Barrett Hayton, same deal, and Michael Kesselring. And the question is what are they going to do as it relates to re-signing these players? In my opinion, I think it makes a lot of sense to sign Barrett Hayton and Michael Kesselring again and let them continue to develop and continue to be part of it. They're already really useful NHL players. The real question comes in about Matias Michelli. What are you going to do about the Finnish winger who can't finish? He can't really play defense, but he is an excellent playmaker. I mean, he's kind of a specialist that should be on like your second line power play unit, and that's kind of what he can do, but he doesn't do enough of all the other stuff to really make him attractive enough. It was fun when, Arizona was just excited to be getting a little bit better and they weren't that worried about making the playoffs and winning a lot of hockey games. And so you could play a lot of minutes for Michelli and let him continue to try awesome saucer passes across the seam for wicked one-timers like that are beautiful. It's electric. But again, what do you do about Matias Michelli for this team? If they re-sign him, it'll be an interesting thing to see. For me, he's only a top 6 kind of player. You do not want him to play in your bottom 6. However, I don't know that there is actually enough of a rounded game to make him a true top 6 player. But if they re-sign all of these players, this is what that would look like. So Michelli and Tej Iginla are going to be kind of sitting in the same spot. And again, this makes it clearer in my mind that Matias Michelli is a real trade asset right now. And what can Utah do to try to maximize what they get from Matias Michelli so that they can fill in some of the blanks that you see on this sheet right there? As it relates to Michael Kesselring, look, I think there's a world where Michael Kesselring continues to develop his game and actually gets good enough where you could potentially play him as a right side defenseman with Mikhail Sergachev and be happy with it. Or maybe you move up Dursey and you play Kesselring as your second pair defenseman. There's a chance that there's a lot more development there for Kesselring. I like the player a lot. There's also a chance that you could move him and trade for something really nice in exchange for Michael Kesselring. The question is, do other teams value him the way that Utah currently values him and feel about him the way I kind of feel about him? The question will be, is it him or is it Maverick Lamoureux? And can you get somebody maybe bite on Maverick Lamoureux more than you could Kesselring? I think that's probably more likely the case. And could you trade Maverick Lamoureux for something? For a team that is looking more down the road and needs to find a place for their expensive top pair right defenseman. I don't know. Maybe there's a move there. Maybe you could pair Michelli and Maverick Lamoureux and a couple draft picks and find your way into a really nice second line center or a right winger. I don't know. For the sake of addressing it, there are other prospects that are in the pipeline that have a chance at being on this team in 3 years' time. So you can take a look at it. Kind of the, again, consensus idea here of these 6 through 10 prospects are Cole Beaudoin, Artem Duda, Thomas Lavoie, Will Scahan, Sam Lipkin. For the purposes of this video, I think that Cole Beaudoin and Artem Duda are the only two that are worth us discussing in terms of their potential to potentially be on the Utah Mammoth in 3 years' time, if they are indeed looking to be Cup contenders in that window. First, let's take a look at Cole Beaudoin. He is a low ceiling, high floor kind of player. There's no doubt that Cole Beaudoin is probably a third line center in the NHL. Probably an awesome fourth line center in the NHL. And like in the best world possible finds his way as a second line center. Given that, I kind of think that, in the prospect of winning a championship in 3 years' time or competing for one, he's probably got to play on the fourth line. He'll still be very young in his career, and that's what we're going to be looking at for Cole Beaudoin. And it just depends on how much you like Artem Duda. Duda has worked his way in the AHL for a couple years. He is a left shot defenseman, and I think there's a lot of steady play from Artem Duda, and there's a real opportunity for him to maybe make an impression and crack his way into that third pairing and let Olli Maatta maybe play as a 7 and have the opportunity to have them kind of share and bring him along, or at least give him a look along the way to find out whether or not there's a place for Artem Duda in the NHL squad. I think that's something that they're going to have to figure out, but again, as they figure those things out, the time is coming up shortly to figure out whether or not you should move Artem Duda, or maybe you move Olli Maatta and make the choice that you like him enough that he could be your third pair defenseman on the left-hand side. So as you take a look at the blanks on your chart here, you can see there are blanks at the second line center and right wing spot. Obviously, there's the fourth liners, but if we're using the 4th overall pick in the draft on a fourth liner, we're kind of blowing it, aren't we? And a top pair right defenseman. This year's draft is not deep as it relates to defensemen. Matthew Schaffer right at the top. A lot of people really like what he brings. And then there's a couple other really nice defensemen, maybe another one in the top 10, and then, several of them will go in the teens. The thing is, you have the 4th pick, and Schaefer's not going to be available. And there isn't another player that makes sense to use with the 4th overall pick. So it's going to be either a center or somebody on the right wing. And so it fits that one of these 7 players is going to be the pick for the Mammoth at 4th overall. Will it be Anton Frondel, James Higgins, Porter Martone, Caleb Dionne, Brady Martin, Jake O'Brien, or Roger McQueen? It should be noted that only one of those players is currently listed as a winger. So that's Porter Martone. The other 6 are going to be centers. So this just comes down to answering this question. If they go with Porter Martone, it's because they feel great about where they are with Barrett Hayton. 100% they think that Barrett Hayton is more of a 2C and that they have the opportunity to maybe move up Jack McBain or move up Cole Beaudoin. So if Porter Martone is the pick, they either feel one of two things. One, they feel a lot better about Barrett Hayton than maybe I do from earlier in the video, or it means they just think that Porter Martone is special and the very best player they can get at number 4. Now, one of these players is not going to be available to them because Chicago is picking 3rd overall, and one of these players is going to be taken by Chicago. But there's another player that I'm concerned is definitely going to be a center when all is said and done. I just don't see enough hockey sense out of Brady Martin to be certain that he will stick at center for the Utah Mammoth or in his NHL career. It'll be interesting to see what Utah does at 4. It'll communicate how they feel either about Brady Martin or about the staff that they currently have. But there's a lot of great options here, and we'll talk more about each of these prospects in future videos. So it's pretty clear to me, just given how many centers they're considering at that 4 spot, that they're likely going to make that 2C spot on their future contender one of these guys. And what does it mean for the rest of those spots? Well, I think there's a lot more intrigue about the right wing spot and that first pairing right defenseman. I think that you're going to see a trade or the free agent market turn up what happens to be that winger for the second line. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Also, obtaining another high-end defenseman on that right-hand side, that'll be on their chart of something that they need to solve either through free agency or via trade. And as we take a look at the fourth liners, of course, you would hope that they would just look to find a free agent and just kind of plug and play as it relates to figuring that out. So in terms of trading and making asset management part of what they do in this build towards 3 years from now, they need to do this in a strategic way so they don't blow the short-term goals, which is to make the playoffs and then advance in the playoffs, while also making the trades so that they're ready to be a contender in 3 years' time, according to Bill Armstrong's timeline. So players to trade over the next 2 seasons, these are all players that if you can get value for them, if you can get assets for them, if you can find ways to flip them into a second line center, a second line right winger, a top paired defenseman on the right hand side, right shot defenseman, those will be the priorities of this team. And, you know, as you stack more and more assets, they'll be able to do more. So next year, guys with expiring contracts that Utah Mammoth will need to consider trading will be Nick Schmaltz, who has a modified no-trade clause, just means that there are 10 teams that he can block the Mammoth from making a trade with. Alexander Kerfoot, Kevin Stenlin, Matthias Michelli, Barrett Hayton, Ian Cole, and Connor Ingram. So there's a lot of players there on that list that they're going to have to make choices at during this next season. And it will be really fascinating to see. Is it going to be Michelli? Are they going to be able to get good value for Michelli? Are they blowing his value by benching him for the second half of last season? Barrett Hayton, is there a team that can really believe in Barrett Hayton and see what they have on that? And can you get enough of an asset the other way that makes that make sense? Nick Schmaltz, good goal scorer, and some team will definitely want Nick Schmaltz. You can probably get a pretty high draft pick or pretty nice return for Nick Schmaltz, I would think. And then the other players, I don't know. We'll see. There may be a team that really wants the special, abilities of Kevin Stenlin going into the playoffs next year. You'll just have to wait and see, and if there'll be any interest in any of those other assets, and if you can get something for them, might make sense. In the following season, Lawson, Krause, Liam O'Brien, and John Marino all come off the books. Now, the question is John Marino, people might say, hey, hang on, there's a skilled right shot defenseman. Why wouldn't he be the answer for this team? He could be. But I don't know that he showed enough where if you're trying to build a championship level team, is he your number 1 right shot defenseman? Do you put Sean Dursey up and he's your number 2? It's potentially going to be John Marino, but you also have to remember that by that point, he's going to be 31 years old. Which is, fine. You can have plenty 31-year-olds on your team and win a lot of hockey games. But it's a real interesting question about, could you get something more? And maybe there's a space for Lawson Krause to be brought back on this team as well, and maybe he is one of those fourth liners that you sign and you get him to take that role, and if he likes that role, then that's great. Additionally, I think there's potential prospects to trade. We saw them trade Morgan Geekie in order to get Mikhail Sergachev. I think if the deal is right, you can part with Cole Baudouin, Maverick Lamoureux, or Artem Duda. I would be real careful about getting rid of TJ Ginla. I'm not sure anybody is going to be. I think Dmitry Shimashev's kind of a mystery to other teams. I don't know. It'll be it was a confusing moment in that 2023 draft when they took Shimashev. So I don't know that there's a ton of information and data out there on Shimashev with the other teams. Danielle Boot, same thing. And then Maverick Lamoureux and Artem Duda, like we said. I think those are assets that you could live with parting with because you have players in place that potentially cover that base, if that makes sense. If you're going to get rid of one of the big boys, if you're going to get rid of TJ Ginla or Shimashev, like the return needs to be a really huge, solid piece. For instance, there's been rumors that Jason Robertson is available from the Dallas Stars. I love Jason Robertson. I think he's a fantastic player. He needs a new contract at the end of this following season, so you'd have to secure all of that and get all that lined up. But could you make a deal, for instance, with TJ Ginla and make him kind of the centerpiece of what Utah gives up in order to get Jason Robertson? Maybe. Though Dallas would be moving on Robertson to try to get ready to make the next step so that they can eliminate Edmonton and make it to the Cup final. And I don't know. I don't really understand the whole Jason Robertson thing from them, period. So as you take a look at this contender roster in 3 years' time, there becomes one really obvious kind of problem with it. And it's all predicated on your prospects hitting. They have to get these prospects, and they got to get it right, and they got to hit it on all of them. And the question is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the prospects being in on this team, potentially in 3 years' time. Are you going to hit it on all of those? Probably not. So it'll be interesting to see how the wheeling and dealing goes. Of course, this may make me look insane in 3 years' time, but it's worth a conversation now because it'll impact what they do in the NHL draft